Okay, so we have our ingredients in front of us for the creme caramel, along with some of the equipment. So here we're going to need 1 liter of homogenized milk. We have 2 different measurements of sugar. We have a 400 grams of sugar that's going to be using for our caramelization. And then we have 200 grams of sugar, which is going to be internally to sweeten our custard. If you choose, you can reduce this one by 50 grams. I suggest keep the full 400 here. Not all of it is used in the process. I have 5 grams of vanilla extract here. You could also use vanilla beans. And then here I have 8 whole eggs. I'm also going to be using disposable ramekins. You can use your the normal white ramekins that you can get at pretty much everywhere now. I'm going to be using a small to medium size pot with a whisk attachment. If you have a lid for this pot, that will be very helpful. And then the final piece of equipment is a baking dish that I can put some water in so that I can create a bain-marie in my oven. And those are the ingredients and equipment. Okay, so we are going to get our sugar caramelized for the top of our creme caramel. The idea here is to put pretty much like a dark candy at the bottom of our ramekins, that when we put our custard on top and it slowly bakes in the oven and that moisture sits with the sugar, it's going to marry in flavors and also dissolve some of that sugar, making a lovely caramel sauce. So we're actually working in reverse with a creme caramel, starting with the top first so that we can invert it when we are ready to serve. So when we're working in the world of caramel, I have some simple rules. If you stick to these simple rules, you will not have your candy getting gritty or grainy. It will slowly start to caramelize, so you're not going to have it burn too quickly on you. And the idea is to have a nice, consistent color. So sticking with my 3 steps for proper sugar cooking, you shouldn't have a problem. The first step, I like to add some water to the bottom of my pot. I like to just cover the surface of the pot. You don't need too much water. I find if you add too much, it just takes longer to cook down your sugar. It doesn't do anything negative otherwise. So if you don't think you have enough water, you can add a bit more. I don't have a measurement for this because it is depending on the size of the pot. Just cover the bottom of the pot with some tap water. The second step, I call this one build a sugar mountain. You're going to intentionally try to pour your sugar into the center of the pot, avoiding the sides, building a mountain. The idea is we want to keep the sugar away from the sides of the pot because this is where they can turn into condensation nuclei for recrystallizing sugar. All this means is sugar is most comfortable in a crystalline state, and it will take any chance it can to revert back to the crystalline state. So if you find that you are a victim of some gritty or grainy caramels in the past, approaching it this way, you are going to reduce the sugar on the side of the pot and help keep this nice and clear and crystal free. My third step is turn your heat on. I like to go full tilt. I'm going to make sure that all my sugar is wet in the water. I could shake my pot if I like, or I could add a little bit more water to the top of my sugar mountain if it is not going away. Final stage is turn your element on and then put a lid on it. I actually don't have lids to these pots, so I'm using a bowl. The idea is I want to build up some steam here so that it will help me wash down the sides of the pot, which you may have heard in some caramel recipes, brushing down the sides of the pot with a pastry brush. Just by putting a lid on it, and because I added water before, it's going to naturally do that with steam for me. And the less I touch my sugar, the more successful I will be. So this method of water in the pot first, sugar mountain into the water, lid till steam comes out, you will have a more successful result on average. So we're just going to wait for some steam. So I can see some steam. It's really hard to see it on camera, but you do want to be able to see steam pouring out from underneath your lid. When I lift my lid, I want to see moisture on the bottom so that I know that the sides of my pot have been washed down. If you choose, you can reduce your heat now so that you don't have such a rapid boil. The idea is that we're going to allow this to cook and start to caramelize. What I'm actually looking for is a specific color. I'm looking for it to look like, I like to call it iced tea or a really good quality honey, something like a good amber color. It will take some time for this reaction to happen. This is the Maillard reaction, the action of coloring. The idea is I have to boil out the water first. So as long as I can feel a little bit of steam, some moisture on my hand coming, I'm not going to have any caramelization. So this is the realm of using softball stage sugar. If I was doing an Italian meringue, I'd be stopping somewhere around pre-coloring. Once all that water is gone, it will start to change color and it will happen fast. So as soon as you see some color changing, it is important to turn down the heat so that you can watch it carefully. I'm going to take this hot sugar straight from when it's ready and pouring it out. If my bottom of my pot is still really, really hot, it can continue the cooking process. So if I'm going to be pouring very slowly, I do suggest plunging the bottom of the pot in some water to take the heat out so you can buy yourself time pouring. I'm just going to do it quickly so I don't have to do this. You might want to swirl your pot every once in a while. So it's been about 3 minutes of cooking time and you're going to see a little bit of color changing. I'm going to turn down the heat now so that the bubbles are going to reduce, so it's going to look more translucent and I can see the color change. Right now I have a very, very light tan color. You're going to notice that the smell is going to change almost to a smoky smell. You can see it's looking a little bit more like low quality honey. You want to push it a little bit more just till it looks like iced tea. Smells divine. Okay, so about here is where I'm going to advise everybody to stop. I have noticed that a lot of students tend to overshoot the caramelization. So try to be careful not to go too high in your temperature or your color. You don't want to take it too dark. Something like this is lovely. So what I'm going to do is take this and pour it into each one of my containers, just covering the bottom of the ramekin. Now, if you have any remaining sugar, you can pour it out onto a sheet of parchment and use that as a decorative shard. Cleaning this can be a bit of a bugger, so what I like to do is after this pot has cooled down, I like to fill it with water and bring it back to the boil, and then it will clean itself for you. We're going to put those off to the side and get our creme caramel mix going as well. Okay, so we're going to make the custard element of our creme caramel. Now, what I'm going to be doing here is a process of tempering, where I'm going to be partially cooking my eggs here with my milk, the heat from my milk. You don't have to do this completely because we're going to finish the baking process, or the cooking is going to finish in the baking process. So the idea is we just don't want to scramble our eggs. So what I've got here is my 1 liter of homogenized milk, and I'm going to bring this up till just before it's too hot for me to keep my finger in it. So I just like to call that the pre-boil, or when you start to see some simmering action, some movement on the top, or some steam happening. I don't need a boil, I just need a pre-boil. While I'm waiting for that to happen, I'm going to crack my eggs into my sugar. I do not do this until I am ready to start incorporating my milk, because the eggs can be cooked by the acidity level of the sugar. If they stand together too long, like ceviche, you'll get hard bits of egg. So the idea is crack all your eggs in the sugar when your milk is nice and warm. And I'm going to whisk the two of these ingredients together. Once that has become smooth, I can add my vanilla. Again, the vanilla has the ability to cook the eggs because of the alcohol in it. As soon as my milk is quite warm, you can't see any steam, but you can see that the surface is just rattling a bit. So when that happens, I'm going to turn the heat off here. I'm going to slowly incorporate this into my eggs. If you find your bowl spins on you, you can put the non-slip drawer liner underneath it or call somebody to help hold the bowl. I'm going to incorporate this cream in slowly at the beginning. And when I'm about halfway incorporated, I can return this back to the heat. Put that back on the heat, and now I'm going to transfer my whisk to the cream and incorporate this back in. Now I'm not going to apply any more heat. I am going to strain this mixture though. So I'm going to take my mixture into a jug with a strainer. I want to get rid of the protein clusters from the eggs, those little white spots from my eggs. So it's just going to pour it through a sieve. This truly makes the difference, so do not skip this step. And now I'm going to get my ramekins that I prepared earlier with my caramel. You can see now that the caramel has become rock hard. So you can see how that will slowly melt into my custard as it's cooking. I'm going to fill these guys up. Now I'm going to be filling my bain-marie with water at the oven. I find it is a lot easier to move your bain-marie to the oven, put it on the shelf, and then add your water so that you don't splash water into your creme caramel. The idea is that you want the water to come halfway up the ramekin to incubate it and protect it from cooking too fast. I like to use boiling water so that this cooking time is reduced, but if you use room temperature water, it just means it's going to increase your cooking time. What I'm looking for is that the custard sets, I'm looking for it to wobble like Jell-O and not like water. The bake times in the book are accurate, but depending on your ramekins, it can change. So I want you to shake your tray in the oven. So I go to my oven and I shake it. And you can see that it's wobbling, but it looks a lot like water right now. As I bake it, it'll start to thicken up and it will look more like Jell-O. When it looks like Jell-O, it's done. If you start to see cracks on the surface, you are overcooking it. So take it out if you see any cracks happening. Okay, so these are my creme caramels out of the oven. I bake them for about 20 minutes, depending on the temperature of your water when you start. It can be 20 to 30 minutes. Remember, if you see a crack forming on top, that means they're definitely done. The main way to tell, I don't know if you can see it, I guess. You can see that the water, when I shake it, ripples. But if you look at the custards, they're kind of Jell-O-like, little bit wobbly, but they're fully set. I don't have any runny center. It's going to shake like a cooked egg. Okay, so when that has happened, you can take them out of the oven. I leave them in the water bath so they can cool with the water. I find if you take them out too fast, it can cause them to crack again because of some shrinkage. So let them cool in the water. Once they're ready, you can unmold them. So unmolding your creme caramels. Main thing is, ideally, you make and bake them the day before you serve them. I find that sugar at the bottom, that hard disc of sugar, does not dissolve unless it sits in the fridge overnight. So I'm going to have a bit of a lighter color and less caramel sauce on my plate than I would if I unmolded this one tomorrow. So I do suggest baking the day before and unmolding. They're still delicious day of, but save one or two. I'm just going to use a paring knife and I'm going to turn it backside. So I'm cutting with the dull side. So I'm not going to cut my metal container. And I'm going to just run that around my creme caramel. Then I'm going to invert it. If you're afraid of the flip, you can always flip the plate on top and do them together. Or you can just invert it, give it a shake, and you can see that lovely caramel sauce coming out. Give it a raspberry or two. You can see that lovely color of caramel on top, and it's got a delicious little wobble to it. And I hope you enjoy your creme caramel.